And everyone showed up, which is, of course, very commendable. So I'm going to be very brief because I know we're standing, in between you and the dinner. I will share this. You know who I am. I'm a professor at Stockholm University. The director of competition law center and so on. And I'm actually very pleased to be able to share this. We have a similar chapter regarding Internet of Things in the report, which is going to be presented tomorrow. And we have the main author, I would say, on this panel too, which is not me, which is Igor, and we will come to him. But first, we will actually hear a presentation who is also contributed to this report, is Xianlin Wang from Shanghai, Tong University. He's also director of a Center of Competition Law Policy at this university, and regarded scholars both internationally and in China. Please keep your presentations to 10 minutes if possible. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here to attend this pre-conference international academic workshop. I'm sorry for being late. I just arrived in Moscow 1 hour ago. Yeah, according to the discussion topic of this panel, I would like to talk about this topic, the Internet of Things development and market competition. And I made a simple PPT under the reminder of the moderator. Okay. Yeah. As you know, since the introduction of smart as the concept of Internet of Things has been rapidly recognized on a global scale and has become the core driving force for a new round of technological renovation and industrial transformation. The Internet of Things is a highly integrated and comprehensive application of the new generation of information technology. In recent years, information and communication technologies represented by the Internet of Things are accelerating their transformation into real productivity. Evolving from simple tools and products to the infrastructure and the key factors, reshaping the way of production and organization. The ICTs have profoundly changed the traditional industrial form and people's lifestyle and generated a large number of new technologies, products, and models, which thus triggering a wave of global digital economy. At the same time, the impact brought by the development of Internet of Things is bound to be brand new, such as surprising new business compounding way will bring convenience to the people's life, but also change people's living environment and the world. The development of the Internet of Things makes the competition and the clarification of the market more detailed and drives the comprehensive development of the automobile industry, retail industry, industrial field, energy field, intelligent building field, and the medical care field. With the top-level design of Chinese government and the and remitting efforts of various locality and departments, the Internet of Things has entered a new phase of the deep integration with the traditional industries. The development of the Internet of Things has achieved remarkable results in China. The transformation and upgrading of industrial manufacturing is becoming a major driver of the industrial Internet of Things. In terms of user and the industrial scale, according to the MIIT, Ministry of Industry and then Information Technology of China, as of the end of the June 2018, the number of final Internet of Things users in China has reached 465 million, and the scale of IoT has exceeded 1 trillion yuan. The IoT cloud platform has become a crucial area of competition. In terms of the standard systems, the IoT integrated standardization system guidelines were formulated and more than 900 standard items were reviewed. International IoT standards, including IoT reference architecture, intelligent manufacturing, electronic health indicator evolution, IoT semantics, and big data were set and published. In terms of industrial layout, the 4 major regional clusters in the Bohai Sea, the Yangtze River Delta, and the Panpel River Delta, as well as the central and the western areas in China came into being. The initial success was in the development and of the national level IoT industrial bases, such as Wuxi, Chongqing, Hangzhou, and Fujian. Such IoT industrial parks in Beijing and Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Chengdu were booming robustly. In addition, China's technology innovation in the key links of the IoT continued to advance, and its industrial capability kept removing. With the extensive application of Internet of Things technology and the development of related industries, the competition in the Internet of Things market is becoming more and more fierce, especially with the emergence of comprehensive platform and the gradual formation of effective business models. The relevant market players of the industrial chain need to find their own positioning in the new round of competition. In this process, some large-scale enterprises with technological and business advantages were inevitably be formed. How to prevent them from abusing such advantages and then control excessive measures and acquisitions needs to attract enough attention of competition law. Apparently, in China, there is no answer in this field. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great. That was a good presentation of the both on competition and IoT, but also the Chinese view on this. I wait with question until the end, but So let's jump to the next speaker, which is Igor, and who authored this chapter in reference to IoT. I think it's a good chapter.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about briefly about the chapter that we did in the report about standard setting, IoT, and what to do next. So, very briefly, what we did, we first defined, well, what is IoT? What are the problems? And like we saw in the previous presentation, we are going to see simply many other things connected to internet, like cars, domestic appliances, we'll have smart homes, connected cars, which should be self-driving eventually, health devices connected to the internet, smart cities. And then we found out that in each of the BRICS countries, to more or less, there are developments in the IoT sphere. So countries are upgrading to 5G, countries are taking steps to introduce smarter infrastructure. And then we looked out about two particular problems. So we defined them as infrastructure standards and as upper layer standards. What does that mean? So for the infrastructure, we said infrastructure needs connectivity. The things in the IoT they need to communicate with each other. And how is that being done? By technical standards. And those are mostly 5G, which has just recently been developed, and now countries are upgrading their infrastructure, but also Wi-Fi, also many others, but the 5G is the most important. So in order for all these things to be connected to internet, to have IoT, we need companies implementing 5G, and that also means companies need to pay for licenses for technology developers. And then we set up who are the technology developers. We see that Chinese companies are on the rise. Huawei is one of the largest patent holder. We have old companies from Europe, like Ericsson, Nokia, Qualcomm from the US. So they would be the ones who need to license the patents to implementers. And then we looked, what is the framework? How do you license them? Generally, you do it, it's called fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory. So it's very broad and flexible concept. But when you go into details, that's where you have disputes. And then we showed some practice in the US and in the EU, what came up from litigation, what is current understanding, what is the licensing framework. There are steps of the European Commission to have more transparency there. And then we also looked at the practice at BRICS countries. And there we saw that there is an uneven situation. In some countries like Russia or South Africa, Brazil, not so much litigation, but in India and China, getting more and more litigation. Why is that? We figured because on the one hand, they are large markets, but they also have their own smartphone manufacturers, Huawei, ZTE, also in India, who also need patents, and they are being targeted by, well, let's say these large patent holders. We examined that, and then we figured out in the IoT, we are going to have even bigger problem than what we have now in smartphones or ICT. There you have relatively no number of industry players, but here connectivity will expand everywhere, all areas of economy, to domestic appliances, like I said, cars, and in each BRICS country, they would have manufacturers who would need to take a license from these companies like Qualcomm, Ericsson, Nokia. And what's going to happen? Well, maybe litigation, probably litigation, and how to kind of prevent that, how to make BRICS countries prepared for that. We propose to have some kind of best practices guidelines adopted in each country. One way this would increase the legal transparency. It would know companies what to expect. It would know if they go to court, will the injunctions be available? If not, what would be some kind of principles to assess royalties? On the one hand, these guidelines may help companies to come to a deal. If not, they may at least know what to expect when they go to court. I would like also to single out one specific question from the report. We have a lot you can read and enjoy. So it is about at which level chain to license. So what does that mean? Do you license patents to car manufacturers, for example, or to component manufacturers, those who supply connectivity to car manufacturers? And generally now in the EU, in the US, we have litigation and talks about that because On the one hand, you want technology companies to license at the end level to car manufacturers so they can have more royalties. Car manufacturers are not happy. They want to license to component levels, and component manufacturers, they don't want to take a license because they don't want to pay. So then you have a kind of circle who's going to pay for that. And why is that important? Again, in BRICS countries, you may see both end product manufacturers and maybe even more component manufacturers. And will this litigation come to them? Maybe. So we also have some ideas which we made in the report, what to do about that, how to go in which level to license. But that's one very open issue. So that's one thing. We examine these infrastructure standards. As a second issue that we covered, we call it upper layer standards. It's a standards for data. That means that to have IoT, devices will need not only to communicate with each other, but exchange data between them. So if you want to have smart cars, they need to have connectivity, but also communicate with other cars. That way they can know the position of other cars, they know the atmosphere, the environment. So in order to exchange data, you need to have some data exchange mechanisms. Of course, that also has many problems. We have identified it in the report. One problem is data is now, we don't know who owns the data. Some say we don't need to know who owns the data. Some say we should know. So that's a debate that we are having now in the EU and the UK, US. Another question is, what if you mix personal data with non-personal data? So personal data is subject to data protection laws. It has a special regime. Non-personal data is currently not under any regime. But usually in life, you get mixed data sets. And then if you're going to share them, what you're going to do with personal data. So you can't just share personal data of us to anybody. And then the third question, if we overcome this, then how to share data? So